Welcome back to my workshop. Now today I've been asked by a subscriber of mine who's been a long-term subscriber, so I don't mind doing him a favour. He's asked me how I would go about making a router bowl template. So basically a template that you use with the router to cut out a bowl. And because it's nearly Christmas, he's sent me a pattern, which is this one, which is a Christmas tree. And 2 pieces of acrylic. This is 6mm acrylic, I think. 6mm, but it's clear. Okay, now what I have to do is try and make a template out of this, from this. So the very first thing I've got to do is either copy this or do a digital version. So let's get up to the scanner, scan this and turn it into a JPEG. Right, so I've now scanned this. I've got 2 more copies just in case I muck it up. Be prepared. And I've also got it as a JPEG on my memory stick. So let's put this JPEG in the computer and then we'll see what we're going to do with it. Right, so my first option was to do it on the laser. That should give me a nice clean cut. So when he's routing, the guide bearing on the router bit will be nice and smooth and he'll end up with a nice job. Okay, but there's an obvious problem, which you may have already guessed. Okay, I've got an old scrap of Perspex here, which I'm going to try first. I'm going to use my Lightburn software. I'm going to set the laser on quite high power. Let's try and burn it and see what happens. Right, so I've done my little tiny Christmas tree here. I've got my clear Perspex here, clear Perspex. Let's fire it. I've got it going at 100mm per minute and at 90%, so it should burn through it. Let's see what happens. Right, see what it's done. Right, so obviously it's burnt straight through the acrylic and it's burnt my baseboard. But has it actually cut it out? No. Okay, so all it's done is where the lasers hit the baseboard, it's just burnt. And what it's done is it's welded itself back together again. Now that's obviously because it's clear, the light's passing through, the only heat is going into the baseboard. So with this, because it's a diode laser, that ain't going to work. Right, let's try a different method. Right, so the second method I'm going to try very quickly is the scroll saw. Now all I want to do is I just want to cut a couple of curves in the same piece of material to see what the edge is like. Now I suspect it's going to be quite rough. Now scroll saw is it's quite good, it's fairly controllable, but let's just see what sort of edge we get. Right, it's cut through it, but of course because it's got hot again, it's welded itself together. That's no good. See if I can snap it off. No. So it literally passed through it and then welded itself together again. Yeah. So that is also not very good for this. Right, let's try something bigger. This fella. Okay, so now what I'm going to try and do is do a similar sort of cut, but on the bandsaw. Right, so let's actually manage to cut it out this time. but the edge is so rough. Let's get you in focus. Okay, the edge is really rough. So if you try to use your router on that, all of the ridges in here will show up on your workpiece. Okay, but it did cut it out, but as you can see, it's melted it again, which is not good. Right, so laser, no. Scroll saw, no. Bandsaw, no. CNC, let's try that fella. Okay, so all I've done here is I'm using the same bit of trial perspex here. Now I've stuck it to the base using some double-sided tape, because obviously once I've cut the middle out, I don't want that flying across the workshop. I've set my pattern is here. Okay, so as you can see, when it cuts it out and I removed a bit in the middle, it should give me this profile, and hopefully it's going to be nice and clean. Now I've done that as a profile cut. I'm going to do it in 4 passes, and the bit I'm going to use in here is a 6mm upcut bit. Okay, don't want to use a downcut bit, I'm going to use an upcut bit. And the idea is to keep this as cool as possible. So obviously you saw with the laser, it got hot and it welded itself together again. The same with the scroll saw, it welded itself together again. And if I use a smaller bit than this 6mm bit, what will happen then is it will do the same thing. It will cut through it, but because the gap will be so small, it will weld itself back together. So I use a slightly bigger bit. I'm going to do a profile cut, cutting on the inside of the edge. Okay, so hopefully that will stay cool enough that it won't actually burn. So let's try this trial version and see what edge we get. Right, so did it work? No, it didn't, because it was getting too hot straight away, cutting nicely at the start, and then obviously it picked up all of the melted bits and stuck them to the bit. Let me show you. Okay, like this. Now what happens then is obviously that picks up the melted plastic, then you've got plastic rubbing against plastic, it creates heat, and the edges are really rough. That's not good. Okay, so that's getting too hot. Now what I need to do is obviously clear those bits of plastic while they're being cut. So if I get my airline and I blow them away while it's cutting, that might help. But what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to run the program again and see if I can go over the profile again just to do the edges and see if I can recover the situation with that. Okay, so that was a bit more successful using the airline as well. There's still some bits of plastic there, but if you look at these edges here, they're much cleaner. And this is obviously, all the damage you see here was caused by the plastic last time. So what I'm going to try and do is, if I've got enough room, I'm going to do it again here with the airline, okay, with 4 passes, and then hopefully we can call that good setup. Okay, so what have we got? Right, obviously, firstly the laser cut through, welded it. Didn't actually cut through, it just shone through and burnt. The scroll saw cut through and welded. The jigsaw, not jigsaw, the bandsaw cut through, but give me really rough edges. The first CNC cut through, but it was getting too hot and it melted. And then this one on the last settings, we've got nice clean edges. Okay, and that's using the airline to blow it away, and more cuts. So this was 4 passes. So I think we can call that a success. So all we've got to do now is scale this up to that sort of size, and then cut the proper acrylic. Right, so I've now got the first real piece on the machine. I've zeroed it. I've redone my design for 6mm thick. I've got my airline ready. It's all ready to cut. So Tony, if this goes wrong, I'm sorry. I've tried everything I could, but let's give it a go. Right, well I think that was a success. I'm covered in snow. Only problem is my compressor overheated halfway through and it's cut out. So let's have a look. Right, well it looks like it's gone all the way through. The only bit still connected I think is just the covering on the back. So if I can get this out, let's have a look. Cool, that double-sided tape's quite sticky. Don't break it, don't break it. Right, well, I got it off. I had to use my scraper. Right, let's have a look at the edges. Yeah, the edges look good. Let's do the big reveal, shall we? Right, well there's one, a little bit here. Probably needed to go another 0.1 of a millimetre. But the edges are fairly smooth, they should be smooth enough for a router. Yeah, that's good. That's not the bit we want, that's the bit we want. Right, same again, this bit here. Okay, I'm going to clean that with a scalpel, but that looks pretty good. I'm impressed with that. Right, now there's something else he wants me to do as well. Right, so the next bit's not quite as easy as I thought. Now I've cut out this, obviously, so we can use a router and cut out the inside. So what he wants now is another one cut out that's about, well, he said 3/4 of an inch, but I don't think I'll have enough room. Bigger than this one. So then what you can do is you can use the bigger bit to route on the outside. So you can do the outside of the bowl. But the problem is, I thought I'd just be able to make this bigger. But let me show you what happens. I'll just show you on the screen exactly what happens. So I've got my original shape, I've copied it. Now if I just make it bigger, okay, equal amounts either side, yeah, you get bits like this. So this is too thin, this is too thin, that's too fat, this is in the wrong place, and this is overhanging. So this, just scaling it up like that doesn't work. So what I'm going to have to do is basically draw it again manually to try and get it so it's equidistant all the way around. That's going to be fun. Right, let me get on with that. Right, so I've had to redraw this manually around it, which is not the easiest thing in the world. It's only a Christmas tree, but that was a bit tricky. So that, in theory, should give me that when it's cut out. The problem is it's going to cut through the edge of the sheet, so you'll only have one template for this sheet. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a trial run and cut it out on a piece of MDF. Well, I'm going to do one pass and then measure it up for size, because I can't afford to waste the last bit of acrylic. Right, let me quickly buzz around this. Right, so my little trial run here. So this bit in the middle is the bit he's going to use to do the outside of the bowl. This was our inside bit. Okay, so that should now fit in there like that. Okay, so we'll route out the middle and then use this bit for cutting around the outside. Now it looks like they're all equidistant around the edge. I'm hoping that's going to be good enough. Right, so all ready to go. This is all zeroed now. That's the last piece of acrylic I've got. I've got my air gun ready so I can give it a bit of a, and I've got my vacuum ready so I can suck up some of the mess. Right, I suppose let's go for it. Right, so that, let's get you in the light, that is a success. Okay, nice clean edges. The outside, we knew this was going to happen, okay, because it was so close to the edge. This was always going to be sacrificial anyway. So we got this, which is for cutting the outside. We got the bit for cutting the inside. Let me quickly show you how they actually work. Right, this may be a bit tricky to see because obviously they're see-through, but if you can look at the light. Okay, so this is our first piece. Now this is for routing out the inside of the bowl. And then we've got our other piece, which is for routing out the outside of the bowl. Now what you do is you get your material, piece of wood for example, and you literally stick this on it. So using probably double-sided tape or something similar. You stick that on it and then you use a router bit like this. Okay, so this has got a guide bearing on the top and it's flush. So the cutting blade is flush with the bearing. And then what you do is you actually put that in your router and you plunge down. Let's get it in focus. You plunge down until this bearing runs along here. Okay, and then that will give you your shape. So that gives you a hole, a hollow. Okay, and then once you've done that, this comes off. You then stick this in the right position on the outside, and then either using the same bit or something longer, you go around the outside to cut the outside shape. Okay, and so what that will give you, a recessed bit in the middle and then cut on the outside. Also you could do this, you could put this in a router table and you could do it the other way up. So you've got this spinning this way and then you can move the piece around it like this. Okay, many ways to do it, but hopefully that should be enough. I think that's quite a success. We learned a lot. The main things you've got to remember is obviously keep this cool when you're cutting. You can't use the laser. You can't use the scroll saw, which is now down on the floor. Can't use the bandsaw, but we could use the CNC. Yeah, so you have to keep it cool, keep it moving, and I used an airline to keep blowing the swarf away because otherwise the swarf melts. All right, if you use too small a bit, then what it does, it cuts it, but then it welds it behind it. Right, I think that's a success. so from our original pattern, okay, Tony supplied me with 2 pieces of acrylic, and we've now got this template, which worked out okay, and this template, which is obviously a pair of that. But in addition, he's got the original one, so if he wants to make some smaller trees, he can use this as an outside profile. Okay, so what I shall do, get all those 3 into an envelope, get it back to Tony. So Tony, thank you very much for the request. I'll get this back to you, hopefully in time for Christmas. Right, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Now scroll short, scroll. Let me show you. Oh, a big lump of melted plastic. Oh, excuse me. I can't get it off. Right, so the next bit is not as easy as I thought. Where's my tree gone? God, that's stuck. How are you going to use them? Let's do that all again.